Our last session of the day on Firebase. I'm Lawrence Moroney. 对不起，我普通话不行。So I'm going to be talking about Firebase Cloud Messaging and Firebase Notifications and some of the technologies that we have in Firebase for you to deliver notifications to your end users. It's quite a short talk, and there's going to be a few demos in there as well. And I'm going to try and make the demos interactive, so I'm going to need your help with them, okay? So, to get started, I'm talking a little bit about what notifications are and some of the technologies that we have in Google. So, how many of you have heard of Firebase Notifications? Not many, okay. And how about Firebase Cloud Messaging or Google Cloud Messaging? Okay, not many more. Okay, interesting. So I'm going to start with Firebase Notifications. And the idea behind Firebase Notifications is that we wanted to give you a technology that you can use to deliver real-time notifications to your end users without you requiring to build any kind of server infrastructure to do so. So if you use Firebase, we have a thing in Firebase called the Firebase Console that you might be familiar with, and the Firebase Console is used for things like analytics and crash reporting and all that. And within the Firebase Console, you're given a user interface that allows you to define a notification that you send to your users, and importantly, and perhaps more importantly, pick the population of users that you're going to send that notification to. So this is a really useful technology, I think, for the business side of your house. So people who are not developers, people who are marketers, people who are business growth, that kind of thing, who don't want to deal with actually writing a server or managing a server. The music's still going. I want to start dancing. Who want to start and you don't want to build a server and all that kind of thing for managing these notifications, but just have a very simple interface that they can go in and they can select an audience based on analytics to whom they would deliver notifications. And then on the client side, within your app, be it an Android app or an iOS app or a web app, we wanted to make it as simple as possible for you to be able to receive these notifications that they can be then used to re-engage with your app. Most users, I'm trying to remember the statistics, but the average user has about 35 apps on their device, and the vast majority of these apps are not used more than one time. So as a result, you have a lot of these apps on your device, they're sitting there on your device, they've been installed and they've been forgotten about, and you as an app developer, that's terrible because you spend so much time and effort building your app, marketing your app, getting people to install it, they use it once and then they forget about it. So what we wanted to do was provide notifications so that when a user receives a notification, it will allow them to re-engage with your app and relaunch your app and remember and rediscover your app. Now, this obviously is very easily open to misuse, where somebody could spam users and send too many notifications to users and turn users off. So what we wanted to do was give you very powerful tools that will allow you to select your user population that you're going to send notifications to so that you don't oversend. These notifications are driven off of analytics, as I've mentioned, and the analytics tools in Firebase are very powerful to the extent of, say, for example, you have an e-commerce application, that you could define a population of users of your e-commerce application as people who have made a purchase in the last 30 days, but have not made a purchase in the 60 days prior to that. As in, these are customers that you've had for a while and are now using your app, and you want to get them using your app and continuing to use your app. And those kind of people you can use to then define a population. You can send a notification to them to say, hey, thanks for using our app, here's a 20% discount code, something along those lines. And as a result, you have this very powerful re-engagement of your users. And notifications, to me, is primarily about re-engaging your users, keeping them interested in your app, keeping them excited to use your app, and growing your app as a result. And my bottom bullet here, which is my favorite part, I think, of using Firebase notifications, is that there's actually no code necessary on the client side. So if you're building an Android app, you have a build.gradle file, and this is what you put in your build.gradle file. That's it. You don't write any code whatsoever within your app itself. You just tell your app to use Kong, Google, Firebase, Firebase Messaging, and whatever the current version number is or whatever the latest version number is, and that's it. You will get notifications within your app. I'm a very lazy developer, and as a result, I really like this, and again, if you're building an app, for the international market, and you want to give your users and you want to give your business the facility to allow re-engagement with your users, this is all you have to do. Pretty simple, right? And this is what the console will look like, the Firebase console, when you're doing that. So here I have it linked with analytics. So I've set up analytics, and there's a notifications funnel. So in this case, there's an app called Bingo Blast, and there was a notification so that, you know, level up in Bingo Blast to unlock new codes that was sent out to people. So they said, hey, if I continue playing this game Bingo Blast, and if I level up, I'm going to get some goodies beyond leveling up. This notification was sent out, as you can see, on the 9th of August, 2016. It was sent to the Android users, and it was targeting between 1 and 10,000 users. And then you can see the effectiveness of that here, where we can see, in this case, we sent this many notifications, this many were opened, and this many were actually acted on. So it's a pretty sharp drop-off in this case, because, you know, not everybody will interact with every notification. And I think it's really good for you to get that kind of intelligence behind your notifications, because here, this tells me that the notification that we used here was a very bad one, because we sent that many and we got that many converted, very, very few. Why do you think this notification would be bad? What's that, sorry? Yeah, the message wasn't good. It's a kind of a useless message, right? It's just saying, hey, if you level up, you're going to get more in the game. Because people who are leveling up are people who are playing the game anyway, right? So why would they want to do this? What if it was a case of, hey, remember Bingo Blast? If you play it now, we're going to give you 500 free coins. Now that kind of notification would be very powerful. And that's the idea behind analytics. So you can use analytics to define your audience, and then you can use analytics within notifications to understand how things work. So beyond the programming and beyond the ease of programming, I just love the fact that we've got analytics on both sides. You know, prior to sending the notification so you can pick your audience, and then after sending the notification so that you can know what your audience has done. My clicker isn't working. Can I go to the next slide? The clicker has failed. There we go. So earlier I showed a piece of code that says, okay, in my application, if I just want to receive a notification, and then I will touch on that notification and it relaunches my app, then if the application was running in the background, I'm going to get my application relaunched. But sometimes we might want to go like a little bit more complex, and we want to write some code that allows me to do something a little bit more interesting with that notification. Maybe take me to a specific screen within my application once the user has touched the notification. And for that, you need a little bit of code, and this is what it looks like in Android. So in Android, I've created a service class called, in this case, it's my Firebase messaging service. And I've told it to, on an action of a Firebase messaging event, use this service. So this is something that goes into my Android manifest. Can I go to the next slide, please? And then within my code, within my Android manifest, it's going to look something like this. Sorry, within my messaging service, it's going to look something like this. I've created a class, you saw it named in the previous slide, called my Firebase messaging service. And in this case, Firebase offers you this class called Firebase messaging service that you can extend. What this does is this messaging service then provides an on message received, so that when Firebase notification sends that message and the device receives that message, this event will get logged, this event will get fired, and then I can do whatever I want to within this event. So for example, upon receiving a notification and the user touches the notification, and I want to go, for example, if it's a game, if I want to go to a special screen where the user gets 500 free coins or something like that, I can do so, instead of just launching them back into where they were, excuse me, in the application. Oh, can I go forward again, please? I don't know why my clicker has failed, probably the battery's out, and forward again. I seem to be in the loop. Can we switch to the demo machine? So let me show a demo of this. I'm going to put the mic down for a second. So to show a demo of this, I have a tablet running here. And you've just seen my unlock code. Those of you who are paying attention. So on the tablet, I've written this application that I call Firebase Notification 1. And if you're familiar with Android Studio, in Android Studio, you have the ability to just say File, New, Single Activity Application, and that's all this is. So when you create that single activity application in Android Studio, you get this and it says hello world at the top. So I haven't done anything to that except adding that single line to the build.gradle that I spoke about. So I'm going to put that app in the background for a moment. And now over here, I'm in the Firebase console. And in the Firebase console, I can compose a message that I'm going to send to that app. So a lot of times when I demo something like this, people think, oh, he's pre-recorded something, he's pre-canned something. So I want you to help me craft what this message is going to be, so that you know that it's real. Anybody want to, any sports fans here? Oh, no, okay. Anybody want to give me a message that I'm going to send? Merry Christmas, or Happy New Year, or welcome Beijing? So if I, whoops, I typed it wrong. My Chinese typing's not very good. So, you know, if I type something like that, welcome Beijing, so this now, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer, maybe I'm a marketer or something like this. I have this tool, and in this tool I can specify the message text. Now maybe this message text isn't the best for notifying someone, but I'm going to use it anyway. And then when I target it, I can target a number of different things. So I can target an entire user segment, which has been defined by analytics. I can target a topic. And I'm going to talk about cloud messaging in a moment, but in cloud messaging, you can define areas called topics. So for example, if you're, the example I used this morning was like, say you're building an application for airport information. You live here in Beijing, and say, you know, you could create a topic for Beijing Airport, so all notifications that go to the topic Beijing Airport, then anybody who's interested in that topic would subscribe to it. So in this case, I could just say, go to that topic, name the topic the Beijing Airport topic, and then every user who's receiving the notification are the users who've actively subscribed to that topic. I can also target it to a single device, as you can see there, or I can pick, you know, a particular app. So here within my Firebase project, I've built 3 apps. There's an Android one called Firebase Notification 1, which is what was running over there. There's another one called Firebase Notification 2, which I'll show in a moment. And there's an iOS one called iOS Firebase Notification 1. But I'm just going to select, whoops, I missed. I'm going to select Firebase Notification 1, and then I'm going to come down here and say send the message. So then the message, hey, look, it's just asking me to review it. And when I press this send button in a moment, keep your eye on the top notification bar just under where it says Nexus 7 on my tablet, and you'll see that notification arrive. So I press send. There's the notification, it has arrived already. So if I swipe down, it's probably kind of hard to see on the monitor, but you can see that top notification, Firebase Notification 1, welcome Beijing, that I typed in a moment ago. You saw how quickly that arrived. And then when I touch on the notification, the application relaunches. So here's a great way to re-engage your users through simple notification. In this case, I sent it out to every instance of this app because there's really only 1 or 2 instances. It's just running on my own devices. But if you've got an installed base of thousands of users, then you could use the filtering that I showed earlier on. You could use the analytics filtering to do so. Now, one question that I always get when I do that demo is that people will then ask, okay, that's all very nice, but when you relaunch the application, you relaunched it into the activity that you were looking at earlier on. What if I want to drive the content of the activity based on the content of the notification? Well, that code that I showed a moment ago where I wrote that simple service, so I built that into this application. So this one, Firebase Notification 2, is exactly the same. It's just the file new single view activity within Android Studio. I added the Firebase notifications to it. And in this case, I also added that service that I mentioned. So I'm going to create a new message. And I'm going to send it to that one. So can someone help me craft a message? What should I put in here? Shout something out. Have a nice day. Okay. I'm going to put the mic down to type. Okay, so I've just typed out, have a nice day, as you've asked. And I'll go down here, and in this case, I'm going to say, send it to Firebase Notification 2. As you saw, I picked it there. It's cropped off, sorry. But if you see it here on the menu, I'm just saying pick to send to Firebase Notification 2, because this app is Firebase Notification 2. So I'll pick that, and I'll say send message. Okay, and again, it's asking me to review it. Keep your eye on the tablet on the left-hand side, that when I hit send, the message will come in. Okay, and now what happened is once the message arrived, you see I didn't interact with it, I didn't touch it or anything, because the app was actually active. when the message arrived, the messaging service picked up that message, you asked me to say have a nice day, and all this activity does in this simple one is just render that text that was in the notification. So it was really as easy as that. All I had to do to build this one that actually received the notification, launched a new activity in response to it, was link in Firebase notifications, and then as well as Firebase notifications, to create that messaging service that I showed the source code for, and have that messaging service launch this activity, and just render this text in the activity. So can we switch back to slides, please? So that's the kind of thing that you can do with Firebase notifications. It makes it very, very simple for you to create these notifications that you can use to re-engage your users. And again, thinking in terms of you've spent all this time and effort building an app, you've spent all this time and effort marketing it, you don't want that app to be forgotten when people have installed it and it's sitting there as one of those dozens of apps that they've only ever used once. And notifications, when used smartly, can help you avoid that. So cloud messaging, it lets you then take this to the next level. So with cloud messaging, you can send messages, like I mentioned, to topics, to users, and all that kind of stuff. We actually, as of now, we're sending in the infrastructure of cloud messaging, Google, we're seeing trillions of messages per week actually being being sent. And these messages generally for connected devices will arrive in less than half a second. So 500 milliseconds or less, many of them even less than 250 milliseconds. So they're arriving very quickly. As you saw when I demoed there, and that's using the Wi-Fi in the room here, they're arriving very quickly. With cloud messaging, you start getting some more functionality that wouldn't be possible with the console here and notifications, such as upstream messages. So you saw me receiving a message from Firebase notifications, but I can build my app when I'm using cloud messaging to send upstream messages too. So for example, maybe in response to a message that I've received, I could send something back. This could be used for chat rooms, this could be used for peer-to-peer chat, all of those kind of things. And topics, as I mentioned earlier on, are also supported in Firebase Cloud Messaging. So when you build your messaging, your app, or when you build something that uses Firebase Cloud Messaging, you get all of these benefits. Now, to build this is a little bit more complex. As you saw earlier when I was using notifications, all of my notifications I was generating on the Firebase console, and Google were nice enough to build that for me. But with Firebase Cloud Messaging, there's a little bit more that you have to do. And with Firebase Cloud Messaging, that generally means you have to build an app server yourself. And this app server can be very simple, and the reason why you need this is that when a user registers with Firebase Cloud Messaging, your app will receive a server ID off of Firebase Cloud Messaging that identifies that device. It doesn't identify personal information about the user, but it's used to address that specific device. So when you have those registration IDs for each of the devices that your users are actually using, you need to know how you're going to send messages to these IDs. So the next thing that you'll do, and this is where I'm saying you'll need an app server, is your app will generally tell your app server, here's my registration ID that Google Firebase has given me, please keep track of it. So then your app server will have a simple database perhaps that will store your registration ID, your Firebase ID, and you store that on your app server. And now, when your app server will tell Firebase Cloud Messaging the messages to send to apps on your behalf. So for example, you could build a console here, like the Firebase console, that you give access to your business people or your marketing people or whatever, or you can build code within your app or your site that then talks to your app server and says, send this message to this topic, send this message to this device, send this message to this group of devices. And then your app server would actually service that message. And how it services that message is, it knows the IDs that the message is supposed to go to, or it knows the topic that the message is supposed to go to. And then Firebase Cloud Messaging, this black box over here, has an API that your server will call, and then your server will say, here's my API key, I'm authenticating myself, I'm this person's application, please send this message to this topic, please send this message to these devices, and stuff like that. And then as a result, you've just built a messaging infrastructure that has all the attributes that I mentioned earlier on. So let's give a quick demo of this and what it looks like. Now, this is a live demo, so if you take a look at the URL at the top there, if you have a browser or a laptop or something open, you can go visit that now. And if you type in a message, it'll send it, it will actually appear on my watch. So a lot of time I ask people, hey, if you want to ask questions or Sometimes this backfires. I did this talk recently in Germany, and people got the URL, and then my watch just kept buzzing for the rest of the talk, and I couldn't concentrate on what I was supposed to be saying. But the idea is like, this is an app server like the ones that I mentioned in the previous diagram. I can show the PHP code that this was written in a moment. These big strings that you see here are the Firebase IDs. So what's happened is this tablet, I've registered with this website. The application's right here. It's again a very simple app. It's just got a single button on it that says register. When I touch that button, the app is calling Firebase, getting an instance ID for this device, sending that instance ID up to my server. The instance ID looks something like this. And then on my server, I just created a simple PHP page that says for each instance ID, I could type something and send it to that device individually. Or this top one, I can type something and send it to all devices that are actually registered. And right now I have 7 devices registered on this page. So if I go in and type something, give me something to say. Anybody?
Someone has broken into your house.
Someone has broken into your house. Wow, okay. So I would never have thought of that one. Someone has broken into your house. Oh, it's a horse. Someone has broken into your house. If I send that, you probably heard the ding, and it's going to show up. Yeah, and here it is. It's showing up on my watch. Someone has broken into your house. Okay. So I can see why you picked that one. And hopefully my wife isn't registered on the same thing, and now she's going to call me panicking. So the idea behind this is that, again, it's very simple. This website, and again, if you, oh, somebody's doing it. Yeah, somebody just sent me a message. I'm not going to answer it. So if you go onto this website, and all this website is doing is there's a MySQL database. The MySQL database is storing these registration IDs. This page is reading that database, writing out HTML for each of these IDs, and writing out HTML for each of these forms, and then creating another form here in HTML, so that when somebody types a message, if I type it in the top box, it reads from MySQL all of the 7 IDs, and tells FCM to send that message to each of those 7 IDs. Or if I do it in one of these individual boxes, it's telling FCM to send it to that one. So let's take a look at the code for that, and how that actually looks. So first of all, if I open this one, you can see this is, I was just using, what was it, MySQL, I was using what's called MyPHPAdmin. So if I go into MyPHPAdmin, and I took this screenshot earlier on, this is just my database. If you've ever written MySQL databases, if you're familiar with MyPHPAdmin, you'll see this is what it is. I just stored 2 fields in here, the time that I created the record, and the actual registration ID in FCM. That's it, it's as simple as that. So now if I go back to, let's take a look at some of the source code. And if anybody wants this source code, I'm more than happy to share it with you. So if I go to homepage.php first, can you read that? No, it's too small. Let me make it bigger. That better? So if I look at this source code, I don't know how easy it is for you to read. Okay, hopefully you can see it. So in this case, all this source code is doing, this is the page that I showed you a moment ago, that what I'm doing here is that I just have a number of HTML forms. And in this case, you can see this form is called allForm, here. And the method is to post. And all I'm doing on this form is when I hit that send button, I'm going to post this form. And this form, when I post this form, it's going to call another PHP module. And as we can see here, that was called lmsend.php, and then telling it the message and telling it the registration ID, or the list of registration IDs. So if we look at that code in PHP, that's where the magic happens. Okay, and it's as simple as this. So at the top, you can see there's a URL, and the URL is fcm.googleapis.com/fcm/send. So as you can imagine from the name of the URL, that's the URL, that's the endpoints that FCM has given me to allow me to send messages. So then there's a number of headers that you need when you're calling that one. The top one is my authorization key. So this authorization key is telling Firebase that it really is me sending it, so that you can't send to my devices, or if somebody is using my app and they've registered with my device ID, you can't send to them. You, like a competitor of mine, or a pirate, or a hacker or something, can't send to devices that are using my app unless they have this authorization key. So the authorization key is how you're telling FCM that this is who you really are. So I'm setting the authorization key in the header, and I'm just saying it's a JSON. And then I'm creating this field, and within this array is a set of the registration IDs and then the data. And the data is the message that I'm going to send, and the registration IDs is just a JSON array of all those registration IDs that I want to send to. And then it's as simple as curl. Anybody use curl? Familiar with it? A few, okay. So curl is just a great way of calling a URL. So curl here, I just specify the URL I want to call. I'm posting, here's the headers that I created, static blast. And here's my fields of my actual data, and I'm telling FCM to send that message to those people. And that's it. That's all it does. It's very, very simple. And that's what gives me the website that we just saw a moment ago. So then my app, and in my app, I'm just linking the same library as I was using for notifications. So on this app, when this app receives the notification, I've tied my watch to this phone, so notifications on this phone, on this tablet, will also show up on my watch, and as a result, I receive the notification on my watch. That's how easy it is to build a very basic application with cloud messaging. Now, of course, if you want to get a little bit more sophisticated, you could do so. Just got another someone has broken into your house. For example, if you want to build a more sophisticated application, maybe one that uses topics, maybe one that uses the location of users, that's entirely up to you at this point. Because you have this API on the back end that you can use to talk to Firebase Cloud Messaging, it's up to you how you do that. And that was the idea that we said, we have notifications that has this console that has tools and analytics to drive what you're going to send. But we also wanted to give flexibility to developers so that you can build a service. If we can switch back to slides now, please. So that you can build a service yourself that intelligently manages the communication to developers based on how you want to do it. And that's the idea behind Firebase Cloud Messaging and the idea behind Firebase Notifications. We wanted to give you tools that you can use to build notifications, real-time notifications, stuff that's driven off of analytics, or a programmable API where you can build your own infrastructure to send notifications to your end users. And that's it. That's the brief talk I wanted to give you. Here's how notifications works. Here's how cloud messaging works. Here's how to build a simple server for cloud messaging. So I've got some time for some questions if anybody has any. At the front here. Just wait for the mic. They're floating around. I just got a third notification that someone's broken into my house.
Hello, sir. My question is, what the difference between the GCM and the FCM?
That's a great question. So just to repeat the question, what's the difference between GCM, Google Cloud Messaging, and FCM, Firebase Cloud Messaging? Yeah. So FCM grew out of GCM. There's no great difference between them at the moment. So GCM was what we had first, and then when we released Firebase earlier this year, we migrated the namespaces from from Google Cloud Messaging into Firebase Cloud Messaging. As we go forward, when we add new features, we'll add them to Firebase Cloud Messaging, not necessarily to Google Cloud Messaging. So we recommend that people migrate over to FCM. When it comes to the backend infrastructure and everything that I've showed, they're pretty much identical. The URL that I gave for the endpoint, you probably saw was FCM, not GCM, but other than that, they're identical. But my recommendation would be that as we move forward, we're moving forward with Firebase Cloud Messaging, and I'd recommend that you migrate to that.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to ask, does the FCM can work well in China?
So, as of right now, Firebase, everything but notifications and AdMob is really aimed at the international market. So if you're building international applications, that's Firebase Cloud Messaging and Firebase Notifications included. It's really designed for that. We're continuing to work on it for the Chinese market, but we don't have any time frame or anything like that yet. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So do we have data of the average reach rate about the Firebase notification? We have been using this app for a while. But when we send we found that actually it's not 100% message that we send can successfully reach users' mobile. So I just want to know what's your average reach rate about this service?
I don't have an average number, but we found that when it's not 100% reaching mobile, it's a disconnected device. So the SLA that we give, or the numbers that we give, are for connected devices. So if the notification's sent and at the point it's sent the device is disconnected, of course it's not going to receive it right away. When it comes back online, it's usually within about 4 weeks. If it comes back online within those 4 weeks, then it maintains the same SLA that they should receive the notification in a short time. But I have noticed somewhat of a drop-off when the initial one was sent, if the device was offline, that it doesn't seem to be quite as reliable when the device comes back online, and that's something that we're working on. But I don't have an average number or anything like that. But so that's when we talk about like it receiving it in a very short time. That's for actually connected devices.
Okay, so the message will be keep sending in 4 weeks until the successful reach.
Correct. I mean, as you saw when I was like doing the message there, you saw that the time to expire was 4 weeks. You can change that, but that's typically how it works. Any other questions? Okay, well, we got one here.
In the Firebase notifications, you had a target. So based on the type of audience you selected, so how is that target identified?
Okay, so
is it something that we can also control and see? Okay, this one gives me better target. This one gives me better.
Yes.
Something like that. We can think around that.
yes, so you can define your target based on an audience defined in Google Analytics. Sorry, in Firebase Analytics. So for example, you could set an audience in Firebase Analytics to be people who've made an in-app purchase in the last 30 days. And you could maybe set another audience to people who made an in-app purchase in the last 60 days. You can send a notification to each of these and then analyze the performance of that notification. So it's up to you to define the audience, and that can be done using analytics. Any last questions? No? Going? Oh, we got one here, sorry.
I joined in the middle, but my question was, if we're developing a cross-platform application using, for example, PhoneGap or something, then is it useful for iOS or Apple, the same code notification?
Okay, so if you're using something like PhoneGap, I'm really not familiar with how you would do the notifications in Firebase, sorry. But we do support notifications and cloud messaging across all 3 platforms, and that's iOS, Android, and the web. With PhoneGap, I think you write it in one like C# or something like that, and then cross-compile it to others. I'm not familiar with that for notifications, sorry.
Thanks.
Any more? Okay, well in that case, Shishini, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, come see me afterwards.